Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, let me say how sorry I am that we have been delayed in the start. We have had some technical difficulties here. As a matter of fact, as we are speaking, I am setting up Tom's shot because we just got him in on the remote feed. We are going to get this all squared away for you. But while we're doing it, and as I'm talking, and you can see me being preoccupied here with the computer, matter of fact, let me remind you guys of what this looks like. I'm setting up the shot right here. So as that's being done, I want to encourage you guys to let people know we are here. Share this link on Facebook. If you are on Facebook Live, I'm about to do that. That's very, very important. And then, of course, if you are on YouTube, we want you to copy and paste this and put it in your address book and send it out to everybody and their mama, right? That's kind of important. So, Tom, I need you to scoot over a little bit to your right, if you can do that. If you can, or to your, it would be to your other way. Yeah, other way. Can you scoot over maybe a foot or so? There you go. Okay. Is that impossible? Yeah. Can you like, oh, you're leaning? Yeah. Move your chair maybe just a tad. Okay, good. I think we're good. And then Gabe, can you raise the camera up so that there's more clearance above his head? That would be great. Okay, and then while we're working on this, guys, we just want you to know, please share this on Facebook. It is very, very important. Oh, I already said that. Share this also on YouTube. We've got, oh, that is perfect. Thank you, Gabe. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot of stuff going on here. So without further ado, let me switch over to Tom. Tom, it's nice to see your handsome face, bro. What's cracking?
Yes, sir. Hey, by the way, I still have that cough I had last week. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm glad we're
it doesn't
social
want to
distancing.
go away.
I'm really glad we're social distancing, bro.
You know what's weird is nobody around me, nobody has got this thing. So I don't know what it is. Apparently I'm not, I think it's some strain number 4,722 or something. I don't know what it is.
Should I be reporting you to the authorities? I don't know.
I don't know. Whatever it is, apparently it's not contagious.
Did you ever think
nobody around me?
Did you ever think that the day would come, bro, that we actually had to report people to the authorities? Like, I'll never do that for health reasons. I mean, isn't that kind of weird?
I've reported you.
Have you really reported me? Have
yeah,
you?
of course I did.
Is that why they took me away the other day? Is that what happened?
Of course I did. Hey, I got offered government money to report, so I started reporting everybody. I'm loaded with cash now. No, you know what? I didn't think these things would actually transpire until sometime in the tribulation period. However, now it makes sense because there has to be a setup. A lot of the bugs have to get worked out before this whole thing's going to be implemented in the tribulation period, Revelation chapter 13. So it's work the bugs out. It's the practice. It's the great setup for the great reset. What it looks like to me.
Hey,
I can't,
bro,
we can't mention certain words in this, but we can talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. There's certain words you can't mention or we're going to be in really big trouble. So we might as well just kind of roll smooth with it, right? How about that?
Yeah.
Hey, so bro, let's talk, man. There's a lot that's going on, a lot of things that have come up in the news recently, a lot of things happening that, again, look, we don't make this stuff up. God's word is completely true. And there's a lot of things that continue to show and reaffirm that very fact. So what say you, bro?
Okay, so there is a lot. It's been a few days since you and I have talked. So inflation, you and I have talked about this. Inflation is about ready to really hit the consumer. And there's some very concerning things. This is out of Zero Hedge. Just this morning, an absolute shocker, core CPI to hit 4% in 2 weeks. And then listen to this. One of my contributors wrote in about this. Without China raising the value of the yuan versus the dollar, inflation is exploding. Diesel fuel has doubled. Oil has hit a new high. Gasoline prices have been estimated to hit $5 this fall. Now, in California, we're close to that already. We kind of always are. But if that means if they're going to hit $5 in the rest of the country, it's probably going to be like $6 or $7 out here. But then it just goes on to talk about, did you hear about this cyber attack on the meat processing plants?
No, tell me about this. I
Okay,
have not
it's
heard this.
massive. The largest meat processing plant in the entire globe was hit by a cyber attack. Not exaggerating. JBS. There's a lot of information on it that you can pull up on the internet, but that happened Sunday, I believe it was. And I'm reading about the fallout of it now. So we're hearing about these things. And then I know some of this is a little bit scary, but Sunday night on my live I talked about, my opening story was about the drought and famine conditions. And I'm reading more about the drought this morning and what's happening. And it's not just here in California or other parts of the United States. What's happening is global regarding famine. And a lot of it just has to do with poor water management. Which is affecting the farmers. But I'm looking at this, James. Okay, now we have this story, right, which is huge. I personally believe people need to really do what they can because it looks like inflation is going to get ugly. And I believe that it's going to be difficult to get some food on in the store shelves, especially in the meat department. I see it coming. People might tell me I'm crazy. I'm not trying to sound like a freak or one of those people that's just totally out there, but I'm just giving a heads up. I'm reading these things every day, all day long. And this is from Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge doesn't go around printing stories that are, just trying to scare people. So I'm looking at that. Check this out. I know you read about the kamikaze drone. We'll probably get into that in a few minutes. Okay, so these are just a few titles to show us where we are. Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles 16 times higher than limits set by the nuclear deal.
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah, and this from Jerusalem Post. Is an Iranian warship heading towards Venezuela? North Korea, let's get North Korea in on this, warns of an acute and unstable situation in message to Biden. Apparently, the Biden administration is saying, hey, South Korea is going to now be able to have these weapons that can take out any place in North Korea. But North Korea is saying, you do that, we've got a really bad situation. Then we have what's going on with China. And listen to this. Senator Cotton, Tom Cotton, says China hasn't paid enough for unleashing this plague on the world. So I'm looking at all of these different things, James. I'm just going to put it into this context. The four horsemen of the apocalypse. And I look at what the Bible tells us what is coming. We're going to you have the white horse, which goes out conquering and to conquer. Then you have the second horse, which is the red horse, which is great war. Then after that, after the red horse, you have the black horse. So you have great war and then the black horse. The black horse is major economic catastrophe followed by famine that comes on the planet. And then you enter in the pale horse, which is death by pestilence and death by various other things that could come from the war and by famine. So I'm looking at what's being set up. And it looks to me, I would say it's kind of like a warehouse where things are being set up. They're being held in the warehouse until the tribulation begins, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Because you look at these numbers and all of the warmongering that's going on, the wars or rumors of wars, you look at all of these things and you go, this is not going to be stable much longer all the way across the board. And when I look at the four horsemen of the apocalypse, I'm thinking, I look at this as part of this great setup. I think we are that close to the time when the Lord's going to call us home. And these are warnings.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Listen, look, we read about all of these things. And one of my, I think, great issues that I take with people who claim they understand prophecy or talk about Bible prophecy is they bring up the issues that you're discussing right now and oftentimes say, hey, listen, we're smack dab in the middle of all of this, right? The tribulation has started. There's people right now that are beginning to say that. They say, the tribulation has started. The Antichrist is around. And lots of people pin up who he is. Some people say he's Trump. Some people say there's all kinds of different descriptions that people are making of him, so on and so forth, except that which the word tells us, right? We'll just leave that whole picture alone. But what's interesting to me is to all of those folks, I would end up saying, okay, you're crazy, right? Like you're not And when I say crazy, not crazy in that there's no way stuff like this could happen. Crazy in that you're not reading the Bible, and yet you're still choosing to make commentary as though you know the Bible like the back of your hand, and you're wrong because you're not paying attention to a lot of details. But where you're going with this is where I wholeheartedly agree. And that is when you read these descriptors being put forth, the setups that we're seeing right now, the things that are happening right now are clearly things that are designed to propel these things into the world. And truth be told, when it happens, it will happen without anybody even blocking at it. They're going to look at this and they're going to say, oh, well, that's normal. We came to expect this. This is what's going on. I don't know if you've noticed this, but now when you walk into a grocery store, and I'm not joking, and you see a sign, the signs no longer say, hey, help stop the spread of COVID. They now say help stop the spread of germs. I don't know if you noticed that.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so that's what a lot of terminology is being used now. They're changing it. They're changing it everywhere you go. And the whole purpose behind all of this is to create this sort of acceptance that the requirements that have been set forth for the way we live our lives right now is about to be normal play, right? Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the bankruptcy that we're setting ourselves up for, the inflation, all of the other things that are going on, listen, the leaders love this because the leaders, number one, are literally shielded from it because their assets are not liquid. Their assets are tied up into all kinds of other things, right? Whether it be property that they have debt on, all that kind of thing. And remember, when inflation takes place, all of your debt begins to be forgiven by natural cause. I mean, if you think about it, people don't understand that how that works. I'll explain it in just a second, but that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the setup to allow all of this to move into that sort of Marxist kind of a function that is going to be necessary, the globalist mentality that is going to be necessary for what we actually know is going to take place. We know it's going to happen, right? We see it. It's not hard. It's we're setting ourselves up for it. We're moving in that direction. It's becoming very, very obvious.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned just germs, and I believe that's going to be one of the excuses to get us away from cash and onto digital currency. Digital currency is coming. I believe Bitcoin's going to bite the dust. I believe that because the problem with digital currency right now is it's decentralized. Well, in order for this government to work the way that the Bible describes and the way the Klaus Schwabs of the world want it to run, is you have to have a centralized currency. So it will be a digital currency. We know that from Revelation chapter 13. And these people are already telling us what they're going to do. They're saying, hey, this is the direction we're going to go. So we have the Bible telling us it's going to be like this. We have these leaders who are telling us it's going to be this way in the Bible. And what the narrative is that's coming from the world powers, they're intersecting. But just the mention of germs being passed on cash, people freak out about that stuff. And it's putting that fear out there. And so and fear is a great manipulator, which Jesus also said in Luke chapter 21, in the last days, men's hearts would fail them from the fear and expectation of the things that are coming upon the planet. So it's real easy to manipulate people when you bring in this constant fear factor. But I do believe also germs are going to be one of the reasons why we're going to be told got to get away from cash.
Well, it's really interesting. I want to dig into this a little bit because you say you believe cryptocurrency is going to be gone.
I believe Bitcoin. No, I believe Bitcoin is going to be gone. I don't believe cryptocurrency is going to be gone. The problem with Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies, they're decentralized. And China's going to want control of it. The U.S. is going to want control of it. Whatever global system is developed, they're the ones who are going to have control of it. But right now, they're all decentralized. There's no way to control these things.
So, you just opened up a big old ball of wax because the whole cryptocurrency thing is something we should probably have a conversation about. Maybe we'll get to it when we go through the cycle of things that we should be talking about. I will tell you this right now. You're right. I think it's a brilliant assessment. I actually think that cryptocurrency as we know it today will be gone. I really believe that. I don't think that it's going to be just a simple Bitcoin issue. I think the way we understand it today is not going to be the way it is in a year from now or in a couple of years from now. And it goes right back to the issue that you're talking about with respect to decentralization. Right now, look, the other thing about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically, is it's also limited, right? There's only so much of it you can actually put out. So the problem is the mechanism of quantitative easing cannot be used on something like that, right? On Bitcoin. And the reason why is because there's only so many numbers that you can use, letters and so on and so forth, combinations that will actually provide enough to be able to create the kind of currency exchange that needs to take place. One of the biggest problems right now that we have with mechanisms like Bitcoin is the inability to be able to break it down in smaller numbers or smaller amounts for the purpose of exchange, right? Yes, you can say, well, here's a quarter of this or here's a quarter of that, but the way that it works, technically speaking, you're only limited by how much you can do with that. So that's not going to work either, right? I think what's going to end up happening is I think currency, as we understand it, is going to be completely gone. I actually think the way it's going to very likely be is based on some kind of a social credit system. That's what I think it's going to be. I think currency is going to be based on that. I don't think it's going to be based on some kind of a, hey, well, I have all the money in the world, so I can buy whatever I want. No, I think it's going to be, no, you don't have all the money in the world. Actually, what you have is social credits, and based on the amount of social credits you have, you're entitled to a certain amount of things, right? So, if, for example, if you're somebody that comes against or decides to not choose to agree with the global mechanisms that they put in place, you'll have so few social few social credits that you won't even be able to buy and sell the way that you need to be able to feed your family. But if you're one of these people that have a tremendous amount of social credits and you've got all that going for your name, you've done all the things that they want you to do, hey, sky's going to be the limit according to how they want you to be able to live, right? You're never going to be able to live completely free, but I think that's where it's going. I think cryptocurrency is actually a setup for that mechanism to be deployed. That's what I think.
Very interesting. I wholeheartedly agree it's going to be the social credit system too that will be determining where you are, if you're a good citizen or a bad citizen. We already see this being set up right now. There was a concert, I think it was in Florida, that if you got vaccinated, it was $18 to attend. If you're unvaccinated, it was $1,000 to attend. Did you see that?
Oh, bro, they're doing this at baseball stadiums.
Dodger Stadium just did it. Dodgers and Padres. So we're going to watch more and more of this take place, and that is good citizen versus bad citizen. So what was going on in China and has been going on in China for years now is now exported to the rest of the world, but using the current situation to pit good people against bad people. And I wholeheartedly agree. I believe also the reason why all these trillions of dollars are being passed in budgets or whatever you want to call it is because of the same reason. People are going to get more and more used to the government handouts as they are. So people are already not wanting to work. So as people are getting used to receiving money, then you enter in the social credit system. Well, if you want to still get money, you got to be a good citizen. Hence is Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these tech giants have been saying for a long time, you have to have this universal basic income. And that universal basic income, they're talking about worldwide. A universal basic income is everybody's going to get the same amount but only based on their social credit. Again, I say good citizen versus bad citizen. George Orwell's 1984.
Bro, and I could not agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. I think we're seeing it again and again and again and again and again. And I'll tell you this right now, where it's all going to start is it's going to start, yes, at every single local area. They're going to start with this, right? This is going to fan out into the national and then eventually into the global world. But let me tell you where it's all going to end up culminating. It's all going to end up culminating. Let me see if I can get it. Okay. It's all going to end up culminating literally in Israel. I think it's going to end up all culminating right where the very moment that Antichrist sets himself up in the temple and demands to be worshipped. And when that very thing happens at the 3.5 year mark, it is going to be literally just solid. You cannot move from this. And if you choose to move from it, you're going to end up dying. And that's what I think is going to end up happening. I think that's kind of the direction that we're going in.
Oh, I do too. That is when it all goes down. So when we look at things that are taking place right now, if we're thinking, okay, we are so close to what you're describing, the social credit system, and the type of, however type of digital currency it's going to be, whatever it is. When you look at how close we are right now, yet Antichrist isn't in that position that you described till 3.5 years into the tribulation period, that shows us how close we really are to everything and why we say, look, we're in the great setup for what is coming. I believe right now who's being identified are people who aren't going along with the system. These globalists are finding out what works and what doesn't work. What are we going to have to do different to make this system work? Because when you hear them talk, this is what they're talking about. A system where you can't buy or sell unless you have a particular identification number. A system where you have to go along with the system in order to be part of it, and on down the list. So they're talking about exactly what the Bible says it's going to be. So again, I look and go, man, if that's 3.5 years into the tribulation period, we must be really, really close to all this going down.
We have to be. Look, we have to be. The issues that are going on right now as they relate to Israel are setting us up for all of this, right? I mean, look at all the debate going on. Have you ever, let me just ask you this question. Have you ever seen more of a prominence than right now in the Israeli-Palestinian debate? Have you ever seen a greater subset of people who are more deceived than the people right now that are talking about the Israeli-Palestinian issue? It's completely out of control. It's getting to the point where it's so unbelievably crazy, right? Literally so crazy that it is almost becoming kind of a right of way for anybody that is part of the woke industrial complex to be able to be recognized or coronated as such, to put down Israel, to rip Israel. That's exactly what's going on. And the narrative that continues on is such a lie. It's a total lie. But God said it would happen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you look at Zechariah chapter 12. I know we've talked about it before, but God says, Jerusalem will be a cup of trembling to all the world and a burdensome stone, and all the world is going to gather against her. That describes where we are right now. It's only going to increase. And it is risen to the point where the world is saying we've got to solve the Jerusalem problem. Hence, what do? We enter in BLM. And I know you've talked about BLM many times, it being anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. And I'm sure you saw this over the Memorial Day weekend. BLM founder calls for the end of Israel. A recently resurfaced video of the recently deposed head of the BLM movement underscores the movement's viciously anti-Israel history. A closer look reveals that BLM's agenda not only calls for the destruction of the only Jewish state, but they are also dedicated to tearing down the United States. And then it goes on to the end of Israel, just quotes from her. Palestine is our generation's South Africa. If we don't step up and boldly and courageously to end the imperialistic project that's called Israel, we are doomed. What's happening is the world at large is buying this. You say the woke industrial complex. You look at what's going on in the schools right now, bringing in critical race theory. It's coming almost all of America. Some states are saying you're not bringing this into our schools, but we're watching it, and it's all part of this. And I agree wholeheartedly. It's all going to center on Israel and the Jewish people and Jerusalem. And that burdensome stone is the Temple Mount. There's a stone right there. Look at the gold dome behind you, the Dome of the Rock. Is that a burdensome stone, James? Look at it behind you.
Walk inside.
There's a stone underneath that.
Well, yeah, walk inside the mosque. That's what I'm saying. If you walk inside the mosque, you'll see the big stone.
Is that a burdensome stone?
You want to? I think.
I mean, yeah. You look at Zechariah. I look at Zechariah chapter 12, and you think that is the zero. That's the target. That's the goal. Yeah, and all of this is there.
I couldn't agree with you more. And going back to the whole BLM thing, I'll just tell you this right now. Those founders are corrupt human beings. They say they care about Black lives. Forget that fact. Listen, look, last year they raised $90 million. $90 million is what they raised, okay? $30 million were spent. $30 million was spent that year. Where'd it go? It didn't go to a single black family. The only black families that money went to and they really aren't families, are the angry lesbian founders of the organization. I mean, when you really think about it. And it's so interesting, the heat that they've been taking. Listen, all these families that have been protesting to police violence and so on and so forth, which, by the way, is a whole other thing. I would highly recommend that you go and you watch a video that I just did. I did a video yesterday with Ryan Tillman. It was a live interview of Breaking Barriers United. He's a Chino police corporal. The interview is unbelievable. You ought to listen to it. The way he describes BLM is amazing. And this is coming from a man who's a black man, right? But what's amazing to me is $30 million they spent, and none of it went to any of the causes that they claim to defend or look for. As a matter of fact, where did the $30 million go? The $30 million went to all of these places that went for literally to line their own pockets, right? What's her name? Patrice just stepped down because of the fact that she has a well over $3 million portfolio of homes that she undoubtedly financed with Black Lives Matter money.
I think she bought a house in Beverly Hills, didn't she?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember. It's like several houses. She doesn't just have one. She has several houses. So, I mean, you just look at that. These people don't care about black people. If they cared about black people, look, if you really want to do the numbers, let's just do a quick breakdown of the numbers here, right? If you look at the last 10 years, statistically speaking, roughly 170 black men, 170 have been killed while being unarmed, right? They've been killed by police officers while being unarmed. Now, by the way, that's a very loose interpretation for what unarmed means. They're unarmed they're considered unarmed if they go for the gun of the police officer. They're considered unarmed if they pick up a weapon of opportunity, like they see a baseball bat in the corner and start swinging it. They're considered unarmed if they attempt to maneuver their vehicle to kill the officer. They're considered unarmed if they're trying to choke the officer with their bare hands and the officer has no other option other than to kill the person, right? That's what they call unarmed. 171 black people have been killed while being unarmed. It's a very loose definition by police officers in the last 10 years. In the same last 10 years, we've lost 70,000 black people to violence at the hands of 98% black men. 70,000. So 171, 70,000. You think the 70,000 is the bigger problem than the 171? How about this? Let's take it a step further. How about in the last 10 years? And this is a low number. This is not a high number. This is low. The real number is probably closer to 6 or 7. But in the last 10 years, 5 million black babies have been executed in their mother's womb. How about this? If you want to talk about this, this is crazy. 3% of the childbearing population in the United States, 3% are black women, yet almost 50% of the abortions that take place are black kids. That is the biggest civil rights issue of the time. And if BLM actually cares about civil rights, they should be dealing with that stuff other than, trying to create all this nonsense on the back of these people who have gone into some very difficult situations. It's absolutely ridiculous. They are haters. They don't care about black people. They've never cared about black people. They are building their organization upon themselves, and they're doing it on the backs of black people by making them victims and not caring if they get any better. Hamas is exactly the same way. They do the same thing with Palestinian lives. The overwhelming majority of Palestinian casualties that have taken place in the last 10 years has been at the direct hands of the Hamas or the horrible, horrible decisions of the Palestinian Authority. That's the reality of it. The casualties that have taken place by Palestinians were not at the hands of Israelis. The majority of them were not at the hands of Israelis. But yet, people want to continue to propagate the lie that is exactly what's going on so that they can take advantage of it. And there's a reason why they're doing this, bro. The reason why they're doing this is back in the day, you could actually create a reasonable argument for revolution based on classism. You're rich, I'm poor, you're them, we're us. right? And we're going to go back and it's us versus them, and we're going to fight, 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 and we're going to make this work, and it's all going to go well. But that's not what's happening right now. What's happening is they're realizing the old school classism doesn't work. We need to resort to racism. We need to take advantage to the emotional condition of the person that we're actually debating this thing with, so that we can actually go ahead and move forward. And that's the reason why people are not standing up against these demonic organizations like BLM, because they're scared of being called racists. That's what it is. They're scared of being called racist. And that's the problem that we're having. And it all is pointing to the things that we read about in the last days.
Oh, yeah. Being called racist is the worst thing that you could be called right now in America. So we look what's happening with corporations, and it's all this anti-white stuff that's popping up everywhere. I mean, I'm looking at this, James. I don't know if you saw this. I'm going to come in here. I'll get to it in just a second. It is right. It's here. It's here. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Here it is. Speaker at Tulsa rally tells armed crowd kill everything white in sight. And but people are not standing up against this. They're just going along with it. They're afraid they're going to be called racist if they say something like all lives matter, and they won't stand up against something like this. I mean, what's happening is so radically racist worldwide, but then it is shifted over to Israel, where Israel is called the racist people over there. And you look, you go, well, the whole thing is just absurd. But because people don't argue, but they don't listen to facts anymore. They base everything on emotion. By the way, speaking of emotion, James, this has happened in church worship over the last several decades, where worship became more emotionally engaging than about the doctrine that was being taught within worship songs. So it's a whole generation of people, or two generations of people, that are manipulated based upon what they feel. They feel like they know the Lord, therefore they know the Lord. They feel like this is the right thing to do, so that's the right thing to do, instead of basing anything on facts. People don't want to pay any attention to facts. Facts confront their feelings, and they don't like that. So how they feel, they believe, well, therefore how I feel is what is truth.
Where do I start with what you just said? I mean, okay, so let's go to the worship issue, because you hit it right on the nose. Look, I have never heard anybody other than you and me, I talk about it all the time, but I've never heard anybody outside of you actually say that what's going on in worship services today is conditioning people for the end times, for the last days. Bro, you are 100,000% correct. Bro, if I could throw out a bunch of those 100%, you are, bro, 100 million% correct. Let me tell you why you're so correct on this. Look. The conditioning that grows within worship services is getting to the point where it's ridiculous, right? Look, churches oftentimes, this is, by the way, at Calvary Chapel Signal Hill, this is why we don't dim the lights. This is why we don't deploy smoke machines. This is why we don't do all kinds of weird things. Now, don't get me wrong. I get it. There's a philosophy behind it. I go to your church, and I think you guys do it really good, right?
We don't have smoke machines.
Yeah, well, you don't have smoke machines, but we go over to the 412 church, and the lights are somewhat dimmed, or they're not totally dimmed. But the reason why you do it, and you have the sound set up in a way where people are just comfortable to sing out, right? And you have worship leaders that get it, right? I just admire some of your worship leaders. Sam is awesome. But you got a lot of great worship leaders, right? And they get it, right? They understand it. But in a lot of churches, that's not the case. What they do is they turn their worship services into just a full-blown seance. It's almost like a whole kind of a thing. And they deploy all the time horrible theology. That's why Bethel has done so well. That's why many of these other churches have done so well, because the woke industrial complex has taken over, and the way that they get a hold of the minds and the hearts and the emotions of the people that are sitting there is by continuing to pump garbage theology. That's what they do. They pump bad theology. And that's the kind of thing that we're continuing to see on a regular basis. It's happening again and again and again and again and again. Look, here's a great example. There's a song that's been going around for a long time. And I got to tell you, it could not get more unbiblical. It could not be more biblically reprehensible, yet people sing it all the time in mainstream churches. All the churches they sing it, and it just drives me crazy. But think about this. They call the love of God reckless.
Mm-hmm.
They say the reckless love of God. Now, just let me explain this. Nowhere in the Bible do you see the emotion of recklessness or the actions depicted by recklessness associated with God. God has never been reckless. God never will be reckless. You literally cheapen the love of God by actually calling it reckless. And by the way, I read this author's description, him justifying why he used those words, and it's worse than the actual song. It's horrible. He doesn't know his theology. The bottom line is not that I would rip this worship leader. I'm just simply saying he needs to be discipled. And there are men that are around him that need to disciple him and not let him get away with making such just egregious statements. God's love was never reckless. God's love was remarkably calculated, right? There was no recklessness in the love of God. God chose to do what he did. And by the way, the void of recklessness can be stipulated to by simply acknowledging the fact that Jesus Christ never went to the cross willingly. He didn't go to the cross willingly. He went to the cross obediently. He said, not my will be done, but thy will be done. Let this cup pass from me if possible. He didn't want it to happen. So he didn't go to the cross willfully. He went to the cross obediently. Folks, that is not recklessness. That is not indicative of the emotion of recklessness. That is indicative of what? It's indicative of something very, very important. We got to understand this. It is indicative of one predominant characteristic, and that characteristic is calculation. God's love is an action of calculation. That's something that people don't recognize oftentimes or see, and it's very, very sad to understand or to know that it's kind of in that place. And it's very heartbreaking. It's very, very heartbreaking. But because of the fact that the theology of many of these worship leaders is so darn broken, it is preparing the people who sit in the pews to be brainwashed. This is why those cowards that are members of the woke industrial complex that we've talked about on many occasions have no problem completely bypassing these issues. And by the way, those same individuals will tell you that prophecy is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I promise you that.
And don't pay attention to Israel. God is done with Israel. It is. And, these things have been taught in seminaries for a long time. And so those seminary leaders have come out. They start churches. And this is what we have, along with a society in America that just wants to be led by their emotions. And that's where we are. So, you start packaging everything together and you look at all of this going, the whole thing is a great setup. The 2 Timothy chapter 3, in the last days during the perilous times, people have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. So it's all the spiritualism going on. People feel like they know the Lord, therefore they think they know the Lord when they don't know him. Matthew chapter 7, Jesus said to me, many will say on that day, we did this in your name and we did that in your name. Well, in other words, we did this good work in your name. And we gave money to this in your name. And we did that good work in your name. And the Lord says, I never knew you. Get away from me. Depart from me. And but that is where we are. So I look at the whole, when you start putting all of the different signs that you have in the Bible regarding the last days together, you start putting them all together. And it's got to be alarming to anybody who's willing to just look at it with facts. Get out of the emotion part. Look at it with facts and realize everything is coming together exactly as the Bible said it would. We are totally being set up. James, here's another story to break from what we've been talking about. I know you caught this one. I don't know if you've given much time to it or not because of the Memorial Day weekend and all. But kamikaze AI drone hunted down human targets. This is also in Zero Hedge. Did you hear about this? A recent report by the UN Security Council found that a Turkish-made autonomous drone may have hunted down and remotely engaged enemy soldiers. This bombshell report could be one of the first recorded instances where a Terminator-style AI drone engaged and destroyed human targets on its own initiative. So, I'm going back to, you're talking about, in Revelation chapter 13, we've already talked about the buying and selling. No one's going to be able to escape from the system, and you start realizing, wow, if you're that much of a problem for the system, these drones, artificial intelligence drones, have your target you are not going to be able to escape from them. And this has already happened. This isn't future. I remember seeing the Terminator. You probably weren't even born when the movie came out. I remember seeing it when it came out. Gabe, were you born yet when Terminator came out?
I was born when Terminator.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I was.
You were. You look at that. But this has actually happened already, and so now you realize, okay, wow. You start looking at everything, the direction of everything. I say that's amazing. But
I just lost Tom. I don't know what happened. I think they're going to try to reconnect. Oh, there you go. We lost you for a second. Repeat. Repeat probably the last 20 seconds, bro.
Okay, I want to ask you about this. And apart from the AI drone, that's just something for another time.
We should. But, that's definitely worthwhile discussing.
Well, okay.
I mean,
okay, let's discuss.
It is.
Let's
we
go
should
for
just do it, and then you can ask me the other question. Look,
okay.
The artificial intelligence in drones right now is something that's been around for a long time. I personally. I personally, and I hate using the word drones, they're multi-rotors, but in this case, that is a righteous term. A drone, it's an attack. It was a militaristic weapon, and that's where the word drone comes in. It's an appropriate term. I fly radio-controlled helicopters. I've been doing it for years and years and years and years, and I also fly multi-rotors. And what's very interesting are what lots of people call drones. And what's very interesting is these drones for a very long time have had a lot of artificial intelligence-based autonomy tied to them. I can literally tell my drone, as you would call it, I hate using that term, I can tell my multi-rotor, right now, I have several of them that are very sophisticated. I could tell it, right now, I want you to go 4 miles from here. I can pinpoint the latitude and longitude that I want it to go, and I can tell it to land and then take off, do whatever else I need it to do, takes photographs, all of that kind of a thing, and have it come right back to me. No problem. And by the way, this is commercial stuff. This is stuff that's readily available to us on the market that we can go buy and that we can deploy. I could, if I wanted to, take a week and I can build one that would be far more sophisticated than even that. I can build one that can do anything I wanted to do conceivably to be able to get it done. And by the way, can I just tell you, Tom, I know this is going to sound crazy. That's old technology. That's not new technology. That's the kind of technology that's very, very old. The thing is that the military now is becoming a lot more hip to it, because back then, the way you would deploy a drone is you would have this massive military force, behind it. It would be like what looked like a little Cessna. These drones are massive, right? And now they're beginning to realize that they're easily detectable by radar. They oftentimes don't have the kind of agility necessary to make a last-minute change if they need to make it. They don't have the ability to stop on a dime, right? Where these ones do. And so now they're beginning to deploy these little ones knowing about their capabilities. When I fly my radio-controlled helicopter, when I switch from one direction to another, literally when I just spank it around, here's the deal with that helicopter. That helicopter is putting on 80, 90 G's of force when it's going from back and forth. I'm not kidding you. It's not an exaggeration. That's how these things operate. So if you think for 1 second these things are incapable of being able to do exactly what it is that you're talking about, bro, you got something else coming. As a matter of fact, when you ask me about the next thing, I'm going to pull a video for you. I'm going to actually just go download one right now as we speak that will show you the capabilities of these things, just so that you have an aware of it and that you can watch it. So I'll let you jump on the next episode while I go and I actually go and I download a new one. I'll do it right now.
You look for that, because we're going to turn our attention over to Israel before we conclude here. And this is about Iran's uranium stockpiles. 6 times higher than the limit set by the nuclear deal. James, we got to talk about that with everything going on with Israel, all the other things that we are talking about, where all of this is going with Iran, the Biden administration wanting to give Iran billions and billions and billions of dollars. Money is being now poured into Gaza to supposedly rebuild Gaza. We know where that money is going to go. Same place it's always gone before, into building tunnels and more terrorist weapons. U.S. is going to be giving all kinds of money. Qatar is already offering, I think, $500 million. And you know what else, James, is going to happen out of this? Israel's going to be blamed for what's happened in Gaza. And these other communities worldwide are going to say, look, we've had to pour money into Gaza. Israel, It's your fault we had to pour all this money into Gaza. That's also going to be the conversation that's going to be taking place. But right now, James, I want to see your drone thing. But when we get back from this drone video we're going to watch, I want to talk about this stockpile, 16 times higher, enriched uranium.
Well, let's talk about the stockpile right now. I think it's an important discussion.
It is an important discussion. I didn't know which one you wanted to have first.
Yeah, so let's do that now. We'll have that discussion about the stockpile. Then I'll play this to show you. So this is not anything that we're not surprised by. Look, we understand what this is all about. You should not be surprised by any of this. Nobody should be surprised by any of this. The foolishness of them entering the United States, seeking to re-enter the JCPOA, is insane. When the JCPOA was established in the first place, it was completely insane because all it did was told Iran, get yourself strategically ready for the deployment and use of nuclear weapons. Yeah. And that's exactly what they did. They've never stopped. They continue to capitulate. We continue to capitulate to their desires, even though they say, I have no intention. We have no intention of re-entering into the JCPOA. The sunset clause, we're already there. You're the ones that backed away from this, so we don't care. You guys can get lost. That is, in essence, what they're doing. That's the direction that they're going. So we know that they have nuclear ability. We know that. Look, the rest of the Middle East knows that. This is why they are becoming very friendly with Israel, because they're recognizing that although they were enemies with Israel in the past, their common enemy right now is Iran. And this makes sense because this is the setup for what we read in Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel 38 tells us something very important, right? Ezekiel makes it clear that Israel is at peace with everybody. They have to be at peace because it exudes to us the picture of complete economic stability. You can't have complete economic stability without peace. There's no way Israel would have unfenced cities without that. I mean, you've got to understand, this is the direction that it's going in. There was a major geopolitical shift. And when I say major, I mean major geopolitical shift that took place when President Trump went in and got everybody to see, when he went in and had a meeting with all of these Middle Eastern leaders, and got them all to understand the fact that Iran is their common enemy. That's the issue. And people are not seeing that. They're not recognizing that. But that's the thing. And so now the economic infrastructure by which many nations in the Middle East perform is going to be better established by normalized relations with Israel. They know that. They know that if they have normalized relations with Israel, they become the beneficiaries of a lot of things. Primarily, one of the things that they're looking to, which is something that is remarkable, is the fact that they're becoming energy independent, if not already energy independent in Israel. And so much so that when they begin to develop the oil resources that I know that they will be developing, they'll be taking those resources and they will be selling those resources to many of the nations that were members of OPEC that no longer can be because of their lack of resources as a result of their mismanagement. I'll look at what happened with Iraq, 20 years ago, when they blew up their oil wells just to keep people from getting them, right? Well, they didn't understand the long-term consequences of that behavior. The long-term consequences of that behavior would be destruction in the region because the demand for oil only increases, the supply decreases, the prices go through the roof, and people like Russia, China, and some of these other people are looking to take advantage of that. Well, the advantage that Israel has with respect to that is they're going to say, look, you don't need to deal with China. You certainly don't need to deal with Russia, at least not on the level that we're recommending. Just come to us, buy our energy, and everything's going to be okay. And don't worry, Russia will also take care of you. And think about it. The Bible says it. The Bible says that the purpose for the attack is going to be their desire to take advantage of the spoil that Israel has. Well, what's the spoil? It's the overwhelming amount of natural resources allotted to them. And that's exactly what we're setting ourselves up for. So don't be mistaken, or look, when you look at what's going on with the JCPOA right now, you look at what's going on with Iraq, this should not surprise us. And the overwhelming amount of nuclear weapons that they are beginning to build up is going to be enough to get enough international attention to cause many of these other Middle Eastern nations, which by the way are Sunni and not Shiite, to stop sympathizing with the cause of Iran and begin to associate with the cause of Israel simply for the benefit of the economic normalization infrastructure. That's going to be the thing that's the bigger issue, and that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah. So I look at all of this, and again, James, you used a key phrase, the setup. The whole thing, everything we've been talking about today is the setup. And you wonder how much longer is everything is being set up before everything gets unleashed. While you're getting ready for that, let me just comment with this on everything we've been talking about. In Job chapter 38, God says to Job, have you entered the treasury or the warehouse of snow? Have you seen the warehouse of hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war? I look at that. God's got, he's like holding, he's put all of his judgment tools, his weapons, in a treasury, he calls it, or a warehouse, reserved for the day of judgment. So when we look at everything we've been talking about today, James, everything is a setup. It's like everything is going into the warehouse, waiting for the tribulation to begin. The rapture take place. The covenant is confirmed sometime after that. We don't know when. And then the judgments will begin. The wrath of God will begin sometime after that. But you look at that, it looks to me, that description in Job, how God says, I got my treasure, I got my warehouse waiting for the day of trouble and war, the day of battle. It's coming. Everything is a setup, including
100%.
Including what's going on with everything you mentioned with Iran right now. Okay,
100%.
Take it away.
Okay, so let me show you this really quickly, just to kind of go back to talk about the capabilities of what everybody calls drones. The video that you're about to see, and I'm going to set it up, is a video of a man by the name of Tariq al-Saidi. Now, he is one of the members of the royal family in Dubai, and he is perhaps one of the most accomplished radio-controlled helicopter pilots in the country. The helicopter that you're about to see is roughly your size, Tom. You've seen these before. Okay. I've bought them many times at your church, and I've flown them.
One you have.
Right? Yeah. Now, this guy is one of the best pilots out there. I can kind of do what he does, but much slower. There are some maneuvers, it's like I couldn't even begin to imagine how he does it. But watch what he does with this helicopter. So I want you to understand how capable these drones actually are, what everybody calls drones. The movements that they make are something that nobody has ever seen, right? But if you're in the community, we do this stuff all the time. Watch this. This will blow your mind. I'll let you watch it for a few minutes so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. Hold on to the seat of your pants. This is crazy. Watch this. Get ready for the show.
Ups, da ist vorne irgendwas schiefgegangen, müssen wir mal gucken. Da hinten vorne holt aus der Haube raus.
He's going to make a quick adjustment. Look at how big that helicopter is. See that? I don't have to carry it out too much longer, but that's incredible. And these things can do anything that the pilot really wants them to do. They're substantial. I own several of these, but it's amazing, and it just tells you how crazy this type of thing is. And I've been flying these for years, and you know what you watched him do, I can do. I just do it a much slower. Some of those maneuvers that you watch when he was doing loops through the airs or whatever was in especially in some of the dives, he's doing in upwards of 150 miles an hour in those dives. I mean, people don't get it. The capabilities of these things are pretty remarkable.
It's really amazing to see. I keep hearing about them being more and more weaponized, being used for military purposes, and different types of drones too. Like, you know, you start looking at a movie like Star Wars, and you start thinking of China and the kind of military that China wants to create. You start looking at it going, man, these are like they're like non-human machines carrying out their battles. And this everybody's going to be doing this.
And
Everybody.
this is becoming more and more accepted. When you look at this, I mean, you can look. Forget the technology aspect. What we haven't even talked about this. What about the demonic aspect of all of this? Like, people don't even think about the fact that demons have this unique ability to move in very furtive ways that we're not really all that familiar with. They do some pretty remarkable things, and it's pretty crazy how now, I don't know if you've noticed, we've talked about this last week, the increase of stories now on UFOs. I mean, more and more, we're just continuing to see story after story after story after story after story on UFOs. It's unbelievable. Watch this clip, okay? And again, I've showed this before many times, but watch this because this goes to Bible prophecy. We'll talk about it in just a second. Look at this. By the way, this is mainstream news. This is CNN. This is the Communist Nationalistic Network. You would expect mainstream media to push something like this. Watch what they have to say here. This is amazing. Watch this.
He ran the Pentagon's initial investigation into the sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, or what we all call unidentified flying objects. And Luis, the Pentagon now calls the department you led, the UAP task force, and it's collecting data on these mysterious sightings. Could these objects be spy craft from another country? What do you think?
Well, Jake, thanks for having me. And that's the big question, isn't it, right? What are these things? And the bottom line is that we don't know. And unfortunately, any scenario that we go down is really not a very good scenario. So on one hand, you have the potential to be foreign adversarial technology flying within controlled U.S. airspace. And of course, on the other opposite end of the spectrum, you have something which is completely and entirely different than anything that we're aware of in anybody's inventory. And either way, these things are being witnessed by some of our best fighter pilots. They're being picked up on electro-optical devices such as gun camera footage, and then it's furthermore being substantiated by radar data. So we know they're real, whatever it is.
A retired Navy pilot had a wild description of what he saw off the coast
Listen
of
to
Southern
this
California
description.
in 2004. Listen to what he told 60 Minutes.
The tic-tac-toe pointing north-south, it goes and just turns abruptly and starts mirroring me. So as I'm coming down, it starts coming up.
So it's mimicking your moves.
Yeah, it was aware we were there. So I go like this, and it's climbing still. And when it gets right in front of me, it just disappears.
Disappears.
Disappears. Like gone.
To be clear, he's referring to this giant object.
Do you think we could be talking about demons?
Okay. Yes. So, but I do believe this. And on my Sunday night, I did some questions. I had about 6 extra minutes at the end. And Gabe, you saw some of those questions. I think I'd say at least half the questions I had were about UFOs. And I didn't talk about UFOs in my message on Sunday night. I had other points I was talking about. But people wanted to know my thoughts. And I think you and I are pretty similar on the thoughts there. I believe these things are demonic. I believe that they are a great excuse for why these Christians are a problem. The ones who actually believe in the Bible, they're the problem. So when the rapture takes place, what a great narrative to go with. Hey, these alien beings, they're going to show us the way. They've been here for millions and billions of years, and they realize that these people who believe in the Bible are archaic. They need to be taken out of the way. So they have been taken out of the way by these aliens. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be a selling point. Of course, that's total speculation. I get that. But you got to wonder, why are these appearances happening everywhere? And what will be the narrative when the rapture does take place? Those are two questions. Because there's going to be some type of narrative for why Bible believers, why China is suddenly missing 300 million people or something like that. Why certain churches are empty in America. There has to be some explanation for this when it does transpire. So I look at it, and I think I said this a couple weeks ago with you, James. I don't know if I said it live or not. I may have said it off the record, and I know people just think I'm nuts when I say something like this, but I believe it's just a matter of time before we're going to have this big UN meeting where these leaders of the world are going to say, we have made
100%.
contact.
100%. Completely agree with you.
And
I think we
it's
talked about
coming
it off
quick.
the record, but I'm with you. I would not be surprised if we saw something like this. You said by the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if we said something, if we saw something like this by the time that the Pentagon has to release that report in June concerning these unidentified flying objects. I would not be surprised if they said something then.
Something's happening. So everything we've talked about in the last hour today, we've said all of this is a setup. Because everything points toward the tribulation period. So you look at this and you wonder if these things all appear to be as close as they are we talked about the finances, we talked about famine, we talked about Iran, we talked about a lot of different things today. And then you put this in here, well, this explanation for the rapture has to be set up too.
It's viable.
It's just, it is. I mean, how else these are real people who are very intelligent, who are not kooks, who are saying, we are seeing these things. These are fighter pilots. And they're saying, no, we're seeing these things, and this is what's going on.
100%. Look, I couldn't agree with you more. This is the reality of what we're facing day in and day out. It's happening again and again and again and again and again. And oftentimes we find ourselves in a position where we just sort of blow it off because we think, oh, it won't be us. Oh, it's not our generation. Oh, this is for things to come. But it's getting to the point where the totality of all of these things happening day in and day out, again and again and again and again, you can't deny it. If you deny it, you're aloof. You got your head in the sand. That's exactly what's going on. It's very interesting. I'm going through Genesis right now, Genesis 49, and I'm going to be doing part 2 next week. And the picture of Genesis 49, I've entitled it, and I think it's an appropriate title. I've entitled it. Let me see. I'll look it up because I forgot the exact title. Oh yeah, Israel's future, or the future of Israel, and I'm basing that on Genesis chapter 39 because there are some things that Jacob says to his children about the future of the nation that they'll be forming, right? That are so remarkably valuable here. There's one point where there's reference to some kind of treasure in the sand, right? And that's very difficult to understand what they mean, what Jacob meant when he said that, what the Lord meant when he inspired Jacob to say that, right? If I was studying this even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I'd probably say 10 years ago, it would be so puzzling it's not even funny. Now, we're beginning to find out there's oil in the ground. They're beginning to realize that, right? Not to mention the fact when you talk about sand, you're probably talking about silica. Now I'm going a little Chuck Missler here, but you're talking about silica, and when you begin to talk about, I'll make a note about Chuck Missler in just a minute. When you begin to talk about Silicon Valley, right, and what we're talking about here with Israel. Israel is a Silicon Valley of not only the Middle East, pretty much the whole world. They're on top of technology. So the Bible is real. And a quick note on Chuck Missler. God bless him. I know he's with the Lord right now. Me and you have heard Chuck Missler say all kinds of things that we think, okay, I don't really agree with that. But I will tell you the one thing that I love about a guy like Chuck Missler. Chuck Missler had the amazing, unique gifting and anointing to cause people to want to study the word after people would listen to him. And I was just one of the things that I've always admired about Chuck, and only wish that I could have that kind of gift. He made a great contribution to the Christian world. And it's funny, a lot of things that people called him crazy about, he was dead right about, So it's one of those things. But when you have the forward-looking eye, you really understand what the Bible is really talking about, Bible prophecy and so on and so forth, you're going to develop understandings about things that people say you're crazy for even thinking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm looking at all of these different things, and it's just absolutely remarkable. And I want to say this. I know we've been on for over an hour now, but I want to say this before we wrap up. James, you said it in the very beginning of the program that you receive the emails, I receive them, conversations. People think we're in the tribulation period. We are not. And if we see these things continue to develop, if we're not raptured soon, they will continue to develop. They have to. And if suddenly we hear we've made contact with UFOs, people are going to freak out over being in the tribulation. Listen, there are certain events that are specific to the tribulation period. None of those have transpired yet. And until those things transpire, we are not in the tribulation period. And there are a lot of them. 0.0 of those events have transpired yet. We're not in it yet.
Not a trace.
And so So I got email last night from somebody telling me I'm a heretic because I'm not telling people we're in the tribulation period. We're not there. Yeah, you're like, yeah, whatever. But hold on, stay in the Word, and realize great deception. So with the UFO conversation we had and the demons, great deception. What massive deception is that? If this announcement comes out, like you and I are saying, it's going to happen. Don't know exactly when. It will happen. Massive deception is going to take place. And people are going to be told, you can't believe in this. Wow.
I mean, it's already happening. Listen, the enemy doesn't need, look, the enemy truly doesn't need us to be able to communicate, or doesn't need the world to be able to communicate the things that he's communicating. The bottom line is he's being used, we are being used, Christians are being used greatly to communicate the principle that he constantly is wanting to communicate. It's ugly. The woke industrial complex is inspiring Christians, is inspiring people who call themselves Christians to function outside of that way. And Satan loves it. Satan is being glorified through it. It's not going to last long, right? But that's the reality of it. You don't need anybody. You don't need, listen, do we have churches right now that are saying that the Bible is not the word of God? You've got churches that have closed down.
Yeah.
Look, I've talked about this. They've closed down. I mean, come on. This is crazy. You've got people the likes of Tim Keller and all kinds of other people that are saying, oh, this is not all that important. This is not all that important. Somebody told me the other day, they sent me a letter. They said, oh, well, this guy doesn't discourage the teaching of prophecy. I got videos of it. I got videos of people that are saying, hey, none of this stuff matters. Well, you are going to be the many false prophets that lead people in the direction of hell because of your lack of desire to want to teach the word faithfully.
Yeah. Amen. There's an Old Testament and a New Testament, and in both of those testaments, there are a whole lot of words that are skipped, passages that are poo-pooed by pastors who say they're irrelevant or they're just symbolic or whatever. James, we've been on over an hour and I got to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, bro. It's been a good time. Guys, as usual, I wanted to just thank you for continuing to tell us when people are trying to impersonate us. There's been a lot of these guys that are scamming us as the ministry's been growing. I want to thank you for really reporting that and making sure that that these guys are done. We're never going to ever ask you for money. As I said before, there's ways that you can support us. You can go to Hope for Our Times and you can give there. I do have a little note. If you look at the show notes of this show, there's always links to get to Hope for Our Times and all of Tom's resources, or you can go to Calvary Chapel Signal Hill and support us this way. There's also another way that you can support us directly while the show is going on, and of course that's through super chatting or the stickers, and we do thank you for that. You guys are a blessing when you support us that way, but we will never ask you for money any other way, okay? And then Tom, I have to ask you this question real quick before we leave. The Prophecy Conference, can you tell us about that? Is it all closed? What's going on there?
Well, we're trying to open up some more spaces. So I found out Sunday night that we had 4 spaces left. By the time I was done with my message, those were all filled. But we're trying to find a way to open up a few more, at least get maybe 10 or 20 more spaces. So that's what we're working on this week. So if somebody hasn't signed up yet and you're thinking you might want to sign up, pay attention, because I should be able to know by the end of this week, possibly even by the end of today. You can go to our website and see if you can get on. By the way, James, I believe you're going to be the next highlighted one on my Instagram. So people are going to, because we're highlighting different people each week, or a couple times a week. You're next.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
I didn't notice that you didn't highlight me. Yeah.
Well, guess what?
I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, well, you're next. It was George Patton yesterday. Memorial Day.
Are you gonna like make videos of me screaming or something? Is that how you're gonna highlight?
No,
how
actually,
are you gonna do me?
It'll be a still picture, and it's gonna open up with something like this. Does my next person that's speaking even need an introduction? then it goes into, so I can read to you exactly what it says.
Oh, God help us all.
But it should post sometime today. So there you go. Okay. Hey, also, we're going to be talking about 10 Kings on Tom and James this Friday.
Mm-hmm. Tom, I hope you make a good case.
I hope you do too.
I won't need to. I'll just read the Bible.
Okay.
My case
Boy,
is
I
through.
can't wait to see everybody Friday. Woo! Okay. All right. In fact, we're
All
going
right,
to
you
talk about
guys.
this in just a few minutes. Okay.
Guys, we love you very, very much. Thank you so much for all that you guys have done in just supporting us. We're grateful. We will do one of these Tuesdays, probably the next Tuesday or after that. We'll dedicate some time to some questions and answer between me and Tom. I know a lot of you guys have been asking for that. We will do that. We'll make some time for a Q&A. We got one person in the comments that keeps saying question, but they're not answering the question. So you lost your opportunity. We got to wrap it up for today. But what we will do is we will make ourselves available for some questions and answers afterwards. Thank you guys so much for your blessing. That's the blessing of your support. You guys are awesome. May God richly bless you. Keep seeking him. There's a lot out there, guys. Seek the word of God. Trust in what he has to say and watch God do great things. And then one other thing, I do want to mention this at the very end. Please subscribe to us if you have not done so. It is very important also to our times. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's very helpful. On my Instagram, I could always use support on Instagram at James Kaddis. I want to stay ahead of Tom forever.
You're way ahead of me.
Yeah.
You're way ahead of me.
I'm just messing around. And then the
are.
other thing is help our bro, Olivier Melnick. If you've not gone to Olivier's site and have subscribed to his YouTube, please do it. I want to see God use him greatly in that area. So subscribe there. Love you guys. God bless you. Keep your eyes on him. Come, Lord, quickly, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Please.
God bless you guys.